I think Stellar is cooking. What do I mean by that? I think they have some things in the works that could very well change the trajectory of it moving forward from a fundamental perspective. And let me explain what I think that is, even though nothing I say is financial advice and even though I'm not telling anyone to do anything. So, did you know that days ago, on the second day actually of the Build on Stellar event, basically, it was announced how work is underway for more tools to expand the RWA space on Stellar. Why does this matter? Well, it's because if we think about it, RWAs, or should I say real world assets, it's something that a lot of projects out there do care about. And I think a lot of people in general, a lot of enterprises do care about that to a certain extent. And the thing is, unlike some other projects out there that don't have the proper infrastructure, I would say, Stellar, on the flip side, it's already well established. We know that the Stellar blockchain is historically very fast. It has decent adoption. So I feel like sometimes other projects out there, they're not well equipped to handle something like, let's say in the case of large scale RWA adoption. Whereas when it comes to Stellar, I do not have that concern, even though I'm not telling anyone to do anything. Now, let me just explain what RWAs are. Now, more specifically, to kind of make things a little bit more simple, I'm just going to explain RWA tokens. Now, again, RWA stands for real world asset. And RWA tokens, for instance, they are digital representations of physical assets on the blockchain. So, for instance, we take a look at market sectors like art, for instance, like real estate. There could be a bunch of others, but those are just the examples I'm using for simplicity's sake. But again, it could be used for those market sectors. So when we take a look at that right there, it may sound simple in terms of the concept of it, but we have to think about it again. Other projects out there, they really don't have, in my opinion, arguably, the fundamentals that kind of allow for mass scale adoption in regard to that. That's the thing. A lot of other projects can say that they're focused on that, but can they really actually deliver on mass scale adoption? That's the thing. When it comes to Stellar, it's a little bit of a different ballgame, in my opinion, just because we've seen its historical track record. It's like, for instance, we take a look at Toyota. It's been historically proven, right, that it's reliable and stuff like that, at least in a lot of cases that I do see. But some other car brands out there that appear, we just don't really know. In some cases, it just really hasn't been around for that long in order to really kind of evaluate whether or not it has that reliability. That's the thing. That's an analogy that I would have. And we have to think about this. When it comes to what's a very massive player in the RWA space within this space, it's something called Ondo. But the thing is, Stellar is not necessarily a one-trick pony in a sense where it's not just focused on only one market and that's it. Stellar has multiple sort of pathways that it's kind of focused on. That's the thing. If I take a look at Stellar, people like to say, but who cares? Ripple is more popular. Sure, it is, but I think a lot of people, if they actually take a look at the pure fundamentals of Stellar and they take a look at the Stellar blockchain, I think even though, again, it's not as popular as Ripple, I think actually in a head-to-head sort of competition, I think Stellar can hold its own. A lack of popularity does not mean a lack of fundamentals in some cases. So when it comes to Stellar, people sometimes like to write it off and say, oh, Ripple is just way better. Okay, in terms of popularity, I agree. But in terms of fundamentals, I don't think it's necessarily way better. This is just my personal perspective. Don't get me wrong, I'm still a fan as well when it comes to both projects, but I'm just saying, this is just purely my perspective. When it comes to Stellar, I'm just trying to kind of emphasize the point that I don't think it's as sort of, I guess, lacking in terms of the fundamentals as some would like to perceive it is. At least this is just my personal perspective. I'm not telling anyone to do anything. And we have to consider this as well. Stellar, even having this heavy emphasis towards RWAs, I think really just kind of changes the scene because other projects out there, again, they're just saying that they care about that, but they don't really kind of deliver on that sort of premise of trying to be focused on that. Whereas we've seen Stellar have that historical sort of track record in which we haven't seen for some other projects out there. We don't know if some other projects out there could do that. That's the thing. But even besides that point, though, we have to consider as well, like I mentioned in my previous video, we saw Stellar, have their 5-year partnership when it comes to MoneyGram be extended. That was a massive thing right there. So when it comes to Stellar, I do feel like things are cooking in the kitchen, right? I feel like the stew, the chicken pot pie, it's kind of all cooking right there. The chefs are cooking. That's the way to take a look at it. Gordon Ramsay style, hypothetically. But yeah, besides that point though, people like to tell me, oh, when it comes to Stellar, take a look at XLM, take a look at the pullback it had. Yeah, I agree. However, that could really be said for a bunch of other projects out there. It's not just, it's like this is the only one that's having a reduction currently in terms of the sentiment. It could be said again for a lot of other projects out there. Like, for instance, if we take a look at XLM, okay, not too long ago, it was around 50 cents. That was back in July of 2025. As of right now, we're around 17 cents. So, what does that mean? We're over 2 times more than that. The thing is this, if we take a look at, let's say, July of 2025, does anyone really think that was an altcoin season? I mean, I would assume a lot of people probably didn't think it was an altcoin season. I didn't think it was, I think far from it. If anything, XLM didn't even exceed what it reached back at its peak in 2024 in July of 2025. So, yeah, it wasn't the best of the best time out there, but I'm just saying, even if XLM could return back to that point, again, we're over 2 times lower than that. Bitcoin, for instance, is not over 2 times lower than even its all-time high, and 50 cents is not even the all-time high when it comes to XLM anyways. That's the thing. So when people like to say, am I concerned if there is no hypothetical altcoin season? The answer is no. The reason why is because XLM has clearly proven that even just last year, back in July, it was able to reach around 50 cents. It's already showcased that in July, right? So it was less than a year ago. And was that again an altcoin season? I don't think so. But if XLM could go back to that point from where it is as of right now, I'm in this mindset where I just have nothing to complain about, really. Because people like to say, well, take a look at this microcap that did this or did that or whatever. Okay, sure, but I'm not trying to chase microcaps. That's the thing. I'd like to believe in more so of these established projects that already have kind of an established following, and that's it. I'm not trying to chase the next most fantastic thing of all time that's a microcap. No, I'm not trying to do that. We hear people talking about these microcaps that make it, but for one that makes it, we have to sometimes understand that probably thousands of others did not make it. People don't talk about that, right? People don't usually talk about the ones that don't make it. They only talk about the ones that make it. But I don't want to believe in 2 or 3,000 projects to find one. No, sir, I'm not going to be doing that. That's personally not my style. That's the thing. People like to say, but this microcap could do this movement or whatever movement. Okay, sure, but I'm not trying to become the next Jeff Bezos. That's not what I'm trying to do. That's not what I'm in this space for. Personally, I'm entering into this space just to find something that's not so boring, but at the same time, not something so like random like that, like a microcap. That's the thing. So when it comes to the space, if people like to say, but isn't it boring if XLM could just only go back to around 50 cents? The answer for me is no. Now it's going to be dependent on a case by case basis, but it's not boring for me because, again, the way you take a look at it is this. If Bitcoin went back to its all-time high, again, it's not over 2 times lower than that. But if Bitcoin from right now went back to that point, a lot of people would already think it's like one of the most fantastic things of all time or something like that. But suddenly, if XLM had a bigger percentage in terms of a recovery in a pure hypothetical, suddenly what, it's considered boring? No, I don't agree with that. It's like, for instance, if something does a hypothetical movement of like, let's say just in a random scenario, 300%. Let's just use that as an example. I feel like it almost doesn't even really matter, right? In which case, where I see it, around a 300% movement at the end of the day is still around 300%. It doesn't mean that it suddenly becomes boring in one sense and exciting on another. I feel like, again, if the numbers are the same, then it is what it is. But I don't want to chase that through a microcap. That's just not my style. That's not what I want to do. So when I take a look at it, when it comes to this, I don't need it to do the best things of all time. As long as it hypothetically, maybe in a pure hypothetical, goes back to around 50 cents, again, I have zero things to complain about. But that's just my mentality, right? That's just my mindset. But I'll be sure to make more updates moving forward when it comes to Stellar. So hopefully y'all stay tuned for that. I just want to say thank you for watching. I greatly appreciate it. And I hope you all have a very nice day. It's Willie the Captain. I'm out. Peace. Bye.